got the thumbs up to go ahead and get started. So I know that everybody took some time off of their valuable weekend time to come and share your comments on this very important issue. So I'd like to get started and welcome everyone from far and wide to this community hearing on the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. I want to start out by showing my appreciation and thanking the Palm Desert campus of Cal State University San Bernardino for hosting us. I also want to thank our MC, former mayor of Palm Desert, Buford Kreitz. Thank you for being here, and our panelists for their comments and opening comments in order to really get a good, diverse perspective of what it would mean to reopen the DRECP. And most importantly, all of you who have shown up because you care about our desert, the future of our desert, and want to participate in our democratic process and be engaged on an issue that will affect your lives. And that is why I felt that this was critical to host today's community hearing to make sure all of you are able to have a voice in this process. Today you won't hear us talking very long up here because it's really your public comments and questions that need to be heard and that I will submit to the Department of Interior. With that, I want to provide some top-level information about the DRECP as you begin to consider your comments. The DRECP was finalized on September 14, 2016, 20 months ago. It was finalized. It was accepted. It was a plan that had undergone hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders and meetings and negotiations to really have a plan on how we were going to proceed with the federal lands. As I said earlier, the plan took 8 years to develop and included input from local, state, and federal governments, tribes, industry groups, conservation groups, recreation groups, hunting groups, and tens of thousands of public comments. It was initiated because stakeholders, including private businesses, off-highway vehicle users, conservation groups, and recreation groups realized that we needed to create a plan for the different uses of the California desert to achieve our shared goals. Throughout the process, I sent 3 letters to Secretary Jewell in support of the plan and providing my own input. The plan provides a blueprint for renewable energy development in the California desert in a way that minimizes its impact on endangered species and pristine desert wilderness, so that our vibrant tourism economies that rely on the beauty of the desert are not harmed by our need to build more sustainable energy. The plan gave renewable energy developers a roadmap for where they can develop and more certainty in the permitting process, and also included efficiencies to speed things up so that we can produce the renewable energy. It also included my own input, making land under the Salton Sea part of the development focus areas so that renewable energy development can continue to be part of the overall plan to mitigate the decline of the Salton Sea. As you know, I've been a big proponent in using the renewable energy component in the southern portion of the Salton Sea through geothermal energy, and this is something we got accomplished, which would allow that ability to determine the southern portion as a renewable energy zone so that we can foster geothermal energy in our quest to mitigate the dust exposure in the Salton Sea. The bottom line is that the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan is an example of how local, state, and federal government and private citizens and organizations can come together with tribes and industry to protect our most precious natural and cultural resources, while cutting red tape for renewable development where appropriate and helping us achieve energy independence as a state and as a nation. It took 8 years with thousands of people working together to come to an agreement. opening it up would restart this process, giving administration officials more power to pick winners and losers, upsetting the careful balance in the original plan, and potentially opening up more of our pristine desert for mining and other disruptive land uses. So our panel can expand on different parts of the DRECP that are particularly important to them beyond the basics of what I have covered. So I want to thank everybody who's here. I am looking forward to hearing every single voice. I see some younger students in the audience. Your voices matter as well. I want to hear from everybody to really get a good sense of the questions that you have, of the concerns that you have, of the interest that you have, so that I can take this information and present it to the Secretary of the Interior and the administration. It is of vital importance that we all speak up and have a voice, regardless of which party the president is part of, but it is very important that every individual, every citizen has meaningful consultation and has a say and a voice on matters that will affect their lives. This is that meaningful consultation. This is to ensure we have local community input, local community empowerment. This is the democratic process in action, and that's why I'm so very pleased that everybody is here taking time from your weekend on an issue that will affect our community and our environment and our state's ability to meet its renewable energy goals and our ability to bring in tourism for recreational use as well. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce Buford Kreitz, who will be our MC for this event, and who will facilitate the conversations. And you'll start by going through and having each panelist mention a few things of interest on the topic. Thank you very much.
First, I wish to thank the Congressman for taking time. This, I believe, is the only field hearing that we're going to have on this issue in the entire DRECP renewable energy process. So thank you, Congressman, for being willing to do this on a Saturday afternoon when you have a lot of other things to do, as many times. I will about to be heard in an even better sense in a moment. There. Now, we have 5 panelists who have said they are going to each be brief and to the point. So we will begin. Laura, why don't we begin with you?
Thank you. So I thought I'd start with a story. When I first started working on the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, about 10 years ago, one of the cable news networks wanted to interview an environmentalist and brought me out in front of the windmills in Palm Springs. And pretty quickly, I could tell from their line of questioning that the interviewer thought it was ludicrous that someone who cared about the environment could also care where the clean energy facilities were located. Because clean energy, after all, is such an important environmentalist goal. But it's not surprising that this was the perspective of a national news network a decade ago. Because at the time, there was no national dialogue of how important and fragile the desert ecosystem is. I think that the general feeling, especially from the national media based in New York, was this: the desert is huge, it's vast. Isn't there room for everything and everyone? But the truth was then, as it's always been in the 20th and 21st century in California and actually across the West, that every single acre is spoken for, and millions of acres of desert were being fought over. So for example, the military has massive bases across the desert and uses the desert for flight and combat training. There are many places, both on and off reservation, that southwestern tribes holds sacred. The desert is a premier recreational destination for millions of people who come here to camp, rock climb, ride their off-road vehicles, ride their mountain bikes, go birding. And that's just a few of the reasons why people come here. The desert obviously has a plethora of the essential ingredients for clean energy. Lots of sunshine and lots of wind. And the deserts are home to a rich diversity of plants and wildlife, some of which exist nowhere else on Earth. It's home to creatures like the bighorn sheep that need lots of space to roam from mountain range to mountain range, and the desert tortoise, which, by the way, the prime habitat of the desert tortoise, sun-filled valleys, is an ideal location for large solar facilities. So that's the background, and my answer to the cable news network was this: it's possible. It's possible to have the clean energy that we want and need, and to protect the desert wildlife and habitat, as well as all of these other interests and values, but we need to have a plan. The news channel wasn't satisfied with that answer, but that was the answer. And that's what the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan is, and that's why we worked so hard on it for so very long. Even though the cable news producer didn't recognize the merits of my response, the federal and state governments recognized the need for a plan, which is why under the Bush administration, the federal government signed agreements to work with California on a desert plan, and that's why then Governor Schwarzenegger signed an executive order to create the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. 8 years of scientific research, many millions of dollars, public meetings, and countless hours of collaboration and hard work went into creating this plan. It doesn't have to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. We have a good plan that addresses the needs of all stakeholders. What we need to do now is implement it. And while there may be some tweaks that are needed along the way, the existing plan is the best starting point. In 2016, what we call the DRECP, the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, became basically the policy for how things are going to get done. The policy and the plan are not perfect, but the DRECP is undeniably a great improvement over no plan at all. Not only does the plan provide zones for large solar and wind power plants on public lands where they will have less impact, and not on top of our desert national parks and wilderness and preserves, but it also specifically protected 6.5 million acres of important California desert lands. We are confident that by working together, the stakeholders, the state, and the Bureau of Land Management can solve any issues through implementation of the plan. And what's wonderful is that the complexity and importance of the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan is now part of the national dialogue. Thank you.
Okay, try that. I'm Jeff Coors. I'm a member of the Palm Springs City Council. I serve as liaison to our terrific Sustainability Commission, who's represented here as well, and as our representative on Desert Community Energy, which is a new program that we're launching with Cathedral City and Palm Desert in August that will provide 100% carbon-free energy for the same exact cost that Edison provides their energy. And it's part of a commitment that's very long-standing, way before I was on council, from the city of Palm Springs in support of the environment and renewable energy and protecting the desert. The city of Palm Springs in 2016 officially came out in support of the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan and have sent letters in support of it. And we are opposed to opening it up. It was a lot of work over 8 years to actually achieve something that gets to our goals. And I agree, there are things, if I were going to change it, I would change, but everything's a compromise, and this was a lot of work from a lot of interests. I just want to touch briefly on why Palm Springs is taking the position we are. First, it's the right thing to do, to protect the species, the plant life, everything that is in the desert that is nowhere else on Earth. Second, it's a critical part of our tourism economy. Here in the Coachella Valley, our tourism is our #1 driver of our economy, $6.4 billion a year. and over 50,000 jobs. And our environment and our desert and the recreation opportunities are part of that tourism economy. And then for Palm Springs as a city, and I think it's true for the entire Coachella Valley, a lot of people move here because of the environment, the beautiful desert, and protecting it. And to see the kind of changes that might be advocated if this is opened up are very troubling to us. So we really appreciate Congressman Ruiz pulling this together and your strong support of not reopening this, because it took a lot of work to get to a compromise that everyone overall is very happy with. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. My name is Franco Ruiz. I am a spiritual leader and mental health professional in this community, and now I serve in my capacity as a Saltancy Program Director for the Audubon Society. Why do I oppose to the reopening of the DRECP? I can list a number of reasons, but I'm just going to limit myself, to three main reasons why. Number one, traditionally we have utilized nature and the natural resources in a very utilitarian purposes. It has been just the benefit, for the human beings. Now we have a better understanding that we are part of this larger ecosystem. The decisions that we make now is going to impact not only the wildlife, not only the natural resources. Eventually it will impact our health, the well-being of the communities that live around this beautiful desert. Let me give you an example. The Salton Sea is one of them. Do we want to create another situation as the one that we have a few miles from here? No, we don't. The second reason why I have shepherded and taken care of many families, in both my capacities, as a clergy in the past and as a mental health professional. And I have seen the benefits, both mentally, spiritual, physically, of the families, that spend time in nature. Nature has this restoring effect, especially in times like these where families are becoming more sedentaries. We have the opportunity to work with younger generations to advocate for opportunities for them to spend time in nature. It is proven, not studies over studies, that prove the benefits of people spending time in nature. And for these modern families, I think it is time, that we provide the access, for their communities to spend time, to go hiking, to spend, to allow their families to have this experience in the desert. And third, a few years back, we had the opportunity to bring many young people, 144 young people, along with Congressman Ruiz, and we went to Joshua Tree National Park. And what was very interesting is that most of those kids had never been to any national park, had never been to Joshua Tree National Park. As close as it is, they had never been there. Why? Because underserved communities do not have the quick access, to public lands. Because underserved communities do not have the luxury of spending time in nature. They live on survival mode. So the opportunity of leaders like myself and many other people, and the great support of Congressman Ruiz, we were allowed to expose the younger generations to spend time in nature. If we do not take care of these public lands, if we do not make sure that they keep existing after we are gone, the next generation is not going to have anything to enjoy, anything to protect. We cannot afford to sacrifice these public lands right now. We cannot afford to sacrifice these lands for short-term benefits. We need to protect them now, and we need to make sure that the sustainability of these lands go beyond even our own existence. We have to come as a community. There is a diversity. I see many people of the cloth. I see many people that are deeply concerned of the well-being of these communities, there is an interconnection between us and nature. We cannot afford to jeopardize the well-being of the communities that live around this area.
Josh Boehner, President and CEO of the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce. As a chamber, we always come at things, of course, through the lens of economic development and job growth. That is our primary mission and advocacy. So when we started to look at this, that's kind of how we studied it. I'm very, very fortunate. The chamber I represent is a very strong business community. I'm proud of the business community we have here in the desert. We have over 1,400 members, which makes us the largest chamber in Riverside County. So I have a lot of voices in my head when I consider these types of things. And I've been very fortunate over the last 24 hours. I've been able to talk to some of our solar companies, Greater Palm Springs, CVB, Jeep Tours, a lot of folks that this would impact. As a chamber, we're always looking for balance. And the reason why is because we have a lot of balance inside of our economy. Are we pro-growth? Sure. Are we pro-job? Sure. Do we like to see new industries created? We do. But we also have to balance that against, I have the number at $5.5 billion, but Councilmember Coors' number is bigger than mine, so I'm going to go with his. I like his better. We have a massive economy that's based on tourism. It is a huge part of what we do, and the reality is that folks come to the desert to see the desert. You know, as that desert starts to disappear, if we were to develop all of it and sort of mine it under, what little jobs may be out there, as far as development goes, would by far be offset by the amount of jobs that we would put in danger if we start to undermine our tourism industry. So at this point, having analyzed it and studied it, we too agree that we should leave the plan in place as it is.
Hi, my name is Humberto Lugo. I'm with the Coachella Valley Environmental Justice Task Force, which is comprised of academia, students, conservationists that come together at this monthly meeting. I remember working on the plan, and it was interesting to find all the energy around it, because it wasn't just the conservationists, people that are out hiking and camping and taking advantage of our desert lands, but also the communities that were lacking, that have traditionally not been involved in those in the desert renewable. In the desert, in the natural resource being afforded or taking advantage of natural resources. So the youth that came together and heard from other conservationists that, you know what, this is happening, they also wanted to have their voices heard. And as my colleague Frank mentioned, you know, we have worked with the youth in the Coachella Valley, Eastern Coachella Valley specifically, and how to make sure that they are also able to take advantage of their natural resources around here, because it might seem that this is only, sometimes, you know, I hate to use this word, but sometimes in environmental justice communities in the Coachella Valley, this is set aside for the more affluent hiking and all that. But we want to make sure that, you know what, this is our land, and we all protect it, and we're all there working towards the same goal, that we all benefit from it. And I also want to add that when it comes to air quality, we have high incidence of asthma already in our communities. And so opening the Desert Renewable Plan, opening it up again, and allowing mining or any industry to come in, you know, or exacerbate more of these numbers of asthma and the stuff that's already happening around the Salton Sea Basin. And air quality affects everyone. It's not just an environmental justice issue. It affects everyone, from Palm Springs to the East Coachella Valley. We're all suffering, we're all breathing the same air. So our stance on the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan is, you know, we don't want it disrupted. We don't want that plan to be messed with, because it took a lot of energy. When people don't have the resources to come every day and just look at this 10,000-page document, it takes a lot of resources for someone to say, you know what, okay, you look at this page, you look at that, you know, it's tough. But we want to make sure that this plan remains intact. Thank you.
I think one of the most, perhaps surprising to some, but amazing to some others, conclusions that people drew out of all this is that, number one, there is no free lunch. I don't care where you generate or put electricity, somebody, some area pays that bill. And second, there is no land in the California desert that's not spoken for. Usually spoken for by 3 or 4 or 5 different, often competing groups. There is no land left which does not have its advocates. And it was based on those two premises, that there is no free lunch, and that all of the desert has its advocates, that came together to form the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. It took a lot of years. I had some involvement with it for all 8 years that I was involved. And I would like to pay a special thanks to 2 people who are not with us today. One is the former state director of the Bureau of Land Management, Jim Kenna, who years before that was the area manager here in Palm Springs in this valley. And Jim Kenna stayed on the job till he could sign the DRECP. He wanted that accomplished before he left, and he did. And the second person is Karen Douglas, who's a member of the California Energy Commission, who has worked tirelessly to backfill people who thought they had major issues with the existing DRECP and to cancel out their opposition, or at least say, you know, your problems are solvable in the implementation agreements, and they are. And so you now don't have groups who are advocating for the reopening of the DRECP, minus someone in Washington whose name we all know, who may or may not follow any point of view by anybody on any given day, in any given moment. We'll see. But all we can do is say, here is what folks think, here is what people who live here believe. And by the way, I also want to make a comment that says, yay for tourism. When, as an example, Palm Desert looks at its tourism, the area of tourism that has had the fastest growth, that has the most interest, that has the most use, is outdoor recreation. And I don't mean by outdoor recreation, I don't mean golf. I mean taking a walk, being out in nature, being out hiking, going off trails, doing all of that. And we still live in a remarkable place. You can go from Palm Desert and in 5 minutes, or from most of our valley communities, and in 5 minutes, 2 twists and turns of a canyon, and you have the desert to yourself. There are very few places in the world left in which you have that ability of solitude, and that ability to take things on their own, and to enjoy it, and to be at one with nature. And I think that's a very special thing. And the idea of disrupting that for temporary uses, and they are temporary. I don't care how much one says, well, it'll create this and it'll create this. They are all temporary, and then what's left behind is a desert that does not heal very readily. So, with that in mind, it's time for questions and comments from the audience. And the Congress member has said he will take those questions and comments to the Bureau of Land, to the Department of Interior, and specifically, it will go then to the Bureau of Land Management, and we'll ask them to respond to those. So if you have questions or comments, please make them. And I think there are cards that have been handed out asking people to stick a name and how you would like to have a response sent back to you. Whether it's by postal mail, whether it's by email, whether it's another method, however you want your response to come back, let us know, and the Congressman will do his best to make sure that happens. We are out of the comment period for the DRECP. And the current President of the United States does not necessarily wish to have a lot of input, but we wish to have a lot of input, and our member of Congress wishes to have the input, and our U.S. Senators wish to have input. So, if you will be kind enough to make your questions or comments, and then we will pass them along to the appropriate people in the Bureau of Land Management. Is that fair? Okay. By the way, there are people out here who I know, some of whom I've known for many years, some of whom I haven't seen in many years, and some of whom I've never met before at all. So, yay, and let's get started and have a whole variety of comments. So, who would like to begin? Who would like to be second? There's the second. Yes, sir. And do we have the microphone I can pass around? Thank you.
Good afternoon.
There it
Minor
is.
issue.
Hello.
That's it.
First of all, sorry for being late. We had a lot of people to pick up all around the valley. My comment or just my stance is I think it's relatively early to be reopening the plan again. I think it's a little foolish to be so quick with reopening the plan. So I hope that the plan stays closed. I think we have better things to do out here in the valley, out here in the desert, predominantly. I would say working on solvency issues, because that is a major concern. It is a personal concern of me and a lot of my friends and family. And frankly, I think the DRECP, or talking about reopening the DRECP, is a waste of time.
Your name?
I am Ignacio Ochoa, a resident of Coachella, California. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lonnie Miller. I'm a citizen of Palm Springs, a board-certified MD, hiker, gardener, mother, and grandmother. And thank you to the planners, you're all over the place, of this meeting, and to Dr. Ruiz and the fine panel members for his attention to this matter today. I'm going to take kind of a step back view and a longer range view of this issue. The DRECP is a model for democracy and progress, painstaking, research-based, multidisciplinary, and representative. It is a symbol of human achievement in the 21st century, the kind of species progress which is imperative and apparently inevitable based on the cold, hard, historic data. Is the DRECP a source of pride for Californians? You betcha! We are fiercely proud of this brilliant accomplishment. Is it perfect? Of course not. But as it is implemented, problems are revealed and then they're fixed. Has it stunted economic growth in California, and also front page of the Desert Sun today? Not in the least. If there are not droves of renewable energy companies applying for real estate at this time, it is in large part because there are not adequate customers for the products. In fact, because of technology, which is rapidly evolving, we need less land to produce our food and energy needs. We can look over just the last decade to see how much better off, on average, we are based on every socioeconomic parameter. We can afford to keep our remarkable public lands out of harm's way, and we can't afford not to. Dr. Ruiz, as our representative, you are a lawmaker who has made and will continue to make people better off by discouraging acts that are individually beneficial but collectively harmful, which is the very definition of what the DOI is proposing. The DRECP must be fully implemented.
Hi, Buford. Good to see you again. I'm Professor Ruth Nolan over at College of the Desert. I'm extremely heartened to see representation from the student body of College of the Desert here. I'm speaking not only as a professor, but also as a lifelong desert resident of here and the Mojave Deserts. I've dedicated my life to desert literary scholarship and educational topics. I raised my daughter Tara in the desert, as well as me having been raised in the Mojave Desert. And now I have 3 baby grandchildren who I'm also teaching about the desert. So to me, this is not a place on the map. This is home in the deepest sense. And the DRECP from a long view perspective as somebody who's lived here their entire life and really gotten to travel and know the desert in every corner. There's one I haven't seen yet. I have a pretty idea what's here and even beyond Coachella Valley. And as most of you know, the California deserts contain one of the last largely intact ecologic systems in the world. Our region is cherished worldwide, and for an administration to open a piece of legislation that has been so collaboratively arrived at and is already doing so much to stem the tsunami of damage that I've witnessed personally in my lifetime to a shocking extent. I can take my daughter or little grandchildren to a place where I can say there used to be a grove of Joshua trees. Now there's a strip mall, or now there's a renewable energy project, and it's heartbreaking. Or here's a petroglyph area, and there's a lot of petroglyph stone. So looking back over the long view to the days when the Barcelona Vegas road race was happening, and a lot of the early conservation efforts started at that time from people I knew when I was a kid growing up in Victorville, leading to the California Desert Protection Act, and to see how far these efforts have come in the last 40 years is so important, and we need our president to know this. This is home for so many of us. This is not a place, it's not a wasteland, it's not a place to make money off of, it's home. And no disrespect to tourism, that's an important, I mean, you know, mining and destroying the desert in a way that's absolutely disrespectful. Anybody who calls this place home. So I feel my homeland is being invaded by this assault on the terrorism. And we absolutely have to consider it. And we're all doing here. Most of us, I hope, speaking against the
Thank you. Who would like to be the next speaker? Yes, ma'am, I'll bring the microphone over that way. By the way, I don't think any group can say they got everything they wanted out of the DRECP. It was a matter of, yeah, this, but not this, and maybe this, and so on. And there are still adjustments to make. Oh, okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Marian Valdemar. I'm with an organization called Chica, which is a Chicano indigenous cooperative that works in the region all over the Inland Empire, the desert, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. We do a lot of youth engagement, and so folks have talked about youth, specifically youth of color, and we do a lot of exposure of urban youth to the desert and bringing them to the first time for many of them to the desert communities, and that's been very valuable in our work in reconnecting both Chicano and indigenous peoples to their ancestral heritage, which it's important for us to remember as we talk about the desert is spoken for. The desert has been spoken for thousands of years and was protected by indigenous people. The impacts that we're seeing on ecosystems did not happen on our watch. They happened on the watch of other people. And now we're in a position where we're trying to protect it and work with other communities to go back to a time where the desert was truly the ecosystem it should be. And it's important to recognize that and acknowledge that this is indigenous land, and the youth that are engaged in this work have an urgency about it. They have an urgency about it because they almost lost it. And we're in the place of trying to connect it and reconnect it. And there's a credible amount of privilege related to that. The folks who have been in these desert communities for much of the most recent decades have had the privilege of having access to the desert. And we have a lot of young folks who are the ancestors of the folks who caretook this land and have not had that privilege. They deserve the right to honor their ancestors, they deserve the right to protect this land, and they deserve the right to be heard. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Annie Camacho. I am a high school student at Indio High School as well as a member to the Indio Seventh-day Adventist Church. As a youth that lives in the valley and has lived here her whole life, I think that this plan should not be reopened. 8 years was spent on this plan, and for it to be reopened is a joke. Me being a person who loves to hike and camp, I believe that keeping this plan intact will allow not only for me to keep going to the beautiful land, such as the white water and Joshua Tree, but will be available for our future kids and will allow them to see what I grew up around. Let's protect our lands, but most importantly, my home. Thank you to the panel and as well to Congressman Raul Ruiz for listening to us.
Thank you. Are there others who wish to ask questions or make comments? Yes, ma'am. Here comes a microphone your way.
My name is Sandy Bonilla, and I'm the director and founder of the Urban Conservation Corps of the Inland Empire, which 2 years ago I brought to Indio over on Van Buren. I have a charter school that I hire 18 to 25-year-olds. I have about 60 living in the city of Coachella, Indio, the Torres Martinez tribe, and we give them jobs. And one of the biggest jobs we do is hauling out waste tires from the desert. I don't know if everyone knows the hazards of those waste tires. And I don't know, I'm very new to this, so I apologize if it's in the plan. But at any point, we find 1,000, 2,000 stockpiles of tires that are just thrown there. Our crews will go out there, clean them up. We do work with the BLM too. Clean them up. 2 days later, boom, tires are back. And so this is just an ongoing problem. It's for the environment. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem because also it's a health problem. And I don't see any end to it. And I'm in it. I actually get my boots and go out there with the youth. And it's a hazard problem, and it's getting worse. And I see it there every day. And we haul these tires out from far, all over the desert, in the Indio, in the Coachella, all these places. And the one agency that does provide some funding is Cal Recycle, to recycle the tires. But that's never enough. It's a very small, and I'm just wondering if federal resources couldn't come in to help support this. And the other, I'm going to throw in a last comment, is that the local conservation corps in California, there's 13 of them, and the Inland Empire, the one that I started here, is the 13th in the state of California. So we brought in a corps in here, and we're just asking that tire issue is huge in the desert. So I don't know if federal resources can go in that, or maybe the land use, the plan could address that, but it's not getting any better. And for those who love the desert, and I love the desert too, and I'm out there, I'm sure you all have seen the problem. And I'm just wondering if there's any other solution to that.
Now you have a genuine question that deserves a good answer from the federal government, from the Bureau of Land Management. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I have one more.
I'll get this one over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Flanagan, and I traveled down here from the Morongo Basin because there was this opportunity to speak out. And so I will just read to you a bit from the letter that I wrote on behalf of the Morongo Basin Conservation Association to Director Perez. And it goes like this. We oppose amending the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan and stand by the protections gained in the DRECP for millions of acres of California desert conservation and recreation lands. The MBCA actively pursues its mission to preserve the economic and environmental welfare of the Morongo Basin, our neighboring desert communities, and by extension, the California deserts. To this end, we were actively involved throughout the 8 years of the DRECP development and will continue to critically evaluate proposed projects. MBCA advocates for and educates citizens and decision makers on the benefits of personal choices, rooftop solar located at the point of use, and CCA's, community choice aggregates, as pathways towards zero net energy. We are among many organizations, communities, and individuals alarmed by the notice to amend the CDCA, that's the DRECP Land Use Plan Amendment, after only 18 months. We do not support the reopening of the DRECP at this time. We are not sympathetic to executive orders to promote energy independence and reduce barriers to capital investment on even more of our public lands in the California desert. The BLM's request for, and I quote, comments on how land designations identified in the plan might affect development of solar, wind, and other renewable energy resources is an obvious open door for renewable energy developers and local governments seeking to avoid the restrictions and conservation actions attached to development on federal lands. Thank you.
Pat, before you sit down, Pat, would you stand back up just for a second? Over 80 years ago, a woman from Los Angeles named Minerva Hoyt was active in creating what was then called Joshua Tree National Monument, now Joshua Tree National Park. And the greater Joshua Tree area named its most prestigious conservation award in her honor. And this Tuesday, Pat will receive the Minerva Hoyt Award for her work for conservation, and well deserved. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Congressman Ruiz. My name is Richard Lutringer. I'm a resident of Palm Desert. I would prefer that the RECP not be reopened, but I think we can all say that. We can all jump up and down about that. We also have to look at the words of the actual ordinances and the executive orders. The executive orders of the president only go to energy resources and one other thing, broadband access. But the BLM has mentioned in their release going to look at mining access, OHV access, and things which have nothing to do with energy. Now, I am sure that the developments in energy over the last few years, the batteries and rooftop, will show that there really is no need to develop further access in the desert. But I don't think the BLM should also be addressing things which are not in the executive order. So that's my request that that be looked into. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Dashiell. I just want to express my appreciation and gratitude for Congressman Ruiz to hold this community meeting in Town Hall. I live in Joshua Tree, and we do not have a representative that held something like this, so I'm very appreciative for this forum. And I also have the pleasure of having worked on the DRECP for many, many years, and was very attracted to working on it because of the balance it sought for the desert in terms of allowing for conservation and allowing for renewable energy and allowing for rock hounding and other ways that people enjoy and recreate in the desert. And it struck this balance, and it was worked on by many stakeholders over many years, including state agencies, local governments, diverse stakeholder groups. And at the end of that 8 years, we came up with a plan. And that's what we have right now, and we need to focus on implementing that plan, not reopening it, and causing confusion, wasting investments that can go towards Salton Sea or cleaning up desert tires or other needs that we have in the desert. We have a plan, let's focus on implementing it, put our resources towards other things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question or comment? Seeing none, we promise, seeing a couple more. We will do two more, and then we will say it's time for the Kentucky Derby and the 9th inning of the Cardinals-Cubs game.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Arturo Castellanos. I'm a COD alumni, and right now I'm a member of the Sierra Club. I come on behalf of the Sierra Club. And so I've been involved with this youth for a while. That we are like very concerned about not just the Salton Sea, about the desert, about all the people, but like the people as well. Not just like the environment, but like the people. Like I feel like what our commander-in-chief has in mind is like he wants to put business over people. Like he wants to like where his interest lies is not with the people, and like they were saying, like this is sacred land, this is sacred ground, and like we have to return back to that, to the essence, to that esoteric knowledge that there is so much like enrooted underneath all this rock and sediment that like we don't even notice. We are just on the surface, but we get beginning to scratch the surface of like what it really had, like the potential that it has had, and what it has taught like our previous generations, and like the power that it still holds. So I think it's important that we protect it, that we should not, like, in my few years of life, I feel like I've gone hiking and I've gone to the deserts and I've had like amazing revelations, and it still has more to teach us. And if we don't welcome it, if we don't come to it like with an open heart, I feel like if we open this plan again, like they're just gonna like jeopardize everything, all the hard work that a lot of people have contributed into it. So I think that they should really keep it close and keep the next generation in mind.
My name is Ruben. I'm a resident of Mecca. It's a little east, close to the Salton Sea. I heard a lot about this plan, a lot from people who are volunteered and to give out their voice and opinion about this plan. To me, I don't really think opening the plan to get resources out, to try to get these resources that are not renewable. Like to me, this land will not be healed after this land is reopened. So a lot of these things that people are very emotionally attached to this land, and a lot of our leaders do not see that. And even if they do, they're not taking it under concern, it just hurts me a lot to know that we have a lot of solutions out there, and you want to go back to something that is very old. We have a lot of renewable solar, we have wind, this money should be going to the Salton Sea, a plan, it needs a lot of attention to know that you want to start putting all these projects out here that does not need to be put out. You know, it does really disappoint me that all these 16,000 comments over these 8 years, and now we have all these people here from different parts of the valley, people who are not even here in the valley. I feel that we won't stop, and even if it is opened, I think we won't stop. We'll continue to voice our word.
I would like to express my appreciation to everyone who took time this afternoon on the weekend to come down here to do this. And I would like to express appreciation to the members of the panel who took time to prepare remarks and to be here as well this afternoon, and to our congressman, and to all the folks who will hear about this meeting in other ways. So thank you to everyone. Yes, ma'am, you wanted to make a comment first. All right. Let's make sure you do.
Hello everyone, my name is Paola. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm here today not only as a protector of public land and indicating that this is indigenous land, but also to express that as a community organizer, as a leader, as a community member, as a resident, this was something that was put together, you know, to hear the concerns, the comments, and the voices of the community, and for us to be able to express our concerns, our feelings, and our appreciation and our love for our land and our deserts. But also, it was also very complicated and a little frustrating to not take into consideration all the different things that play into getting everyone here. And one of the things, what I mean by that is, sometimes certain events are put together like years in advance, months in advance, but other times when it's something as important as this, should take some more dedication and some more time. And the reason being that I bring this up is, as a community organizer, we were told about this event like a few days before today. And other than that, we didn't even have a location for that yet. So we got informed about it a few days, and then like 3 or 4 days, it was like an actual location. So we have to, getting people out here, it takes a lot more because a lot of our folks, a lot of our community are not educated, or not educated, but they don't have a lot of this knowledge of what takes into getting people out here. So basically what I'm saying is that if something like this is going to take place, we need some more time to get our community, if we really want community to know what's going on.
That's as good a closing summary comment as I could possibly imagine. And I would close by just adding that I personally believe, and I've spent 30 years involved in government and such things, that the communities that set aside and that keep public lands for the public will be the economic winners in the 21st century, in this century, and in the 22nd century. We are the winners. Those that become used to be nice places to be, or used to be nice places to visit, will not be that. They'll be the losers in the future. And so I hope all of us, with whatever points of view we have, are dedicated to the idea of being winners in this century and in our next century. And thank you all for being here this afternoon.